40 Acres and Maybe a Mule is a tale of two brothers with a dream to be free of their plantation master. But freedom comes at a great cost, possibly death, during one of the darkest times in the history of our country, the Civil War. In early 1861, 7 of the southern states supporting slavery had seceded from the United States. These former states formed a new country, the Confederate States of America, or the Confederacy. Eventually, their group grew to include 13 states and western territories. The states remaining loyal to the United States were called the Union. At the heart of the dispute between the Confederacy and the Union was the issue of slavery in the southern states. The southern slave states resented the northern states' attempts to interfere with their livelihood and way of life. As the country began to expand to the west, new states joined the country. The southern states believed some should enter as slave states. Attempts were made in 1820 and 1850 to compromise state admission, but efforts to resolve the disagreements over slavery failed. On April 12, 1861, the Confederate States of America opened fire on the federal garrison at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. The war between the states officially begins with the first volley of cannon fire, forcing the garrison to lower the American flag and surrender. President Lincoln issues a proclamation calling for militiamen to defend the Union and instructs all naval and land forces to begin advancing the war. As the war rages on, both sides experience heavy casualties. Violent battles at Shiloh, Antietam, Stone's River stun and shock citizens. The Battle of Antietam is the bloodiest day in U.S. military history. By nightfall of September 17th, over 26,000 men are dead, wounded, or missing. The rifle and artillery fire is so intense at Farmer Miller's 40-acre cornfield at Antietam, it cut every cornstalk to the ground, as closely as it could have been done with a knife. President Lincoln visits Union General George McClellan at Antietam. As the nation approaches its third year of a bloody Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued a presidential proclamation and an executive order. The Emancipation Proclamation was directed to all areas in rebellion and a segment of the executive branch, including the Army and Navy. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are, and henceforth, shall be free. Although the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery in the nation, it captured the hearts and imaginations of Americans and changed the war. After January 1st of 1863, every advance of federal troops expanded the domain of freedom. From the first days of the war, slaves had acted to secure their own liberty. The Emancipation Proclamation confirmed their insistence that the War of the Union must become a war for freedom. The proclamation announced the acceptance of colored men into the Union Army and Navy, enabling the liberated to become liberators. By the end of the war, almost 200,000 black soldiers and sailors had fought for the Union and for freedom. After great losses to the Confederate military, the Union forces gained control of the Confederate capital in Richmond, Virginia. On April 9, 1865, Robert E. Lee surrenders his Confederate army to General Ulysses S. Grant. The country celebrates the end of the war. The Civil War had been bravely fought and left the country in a sad state of recovery. It left former slaves and many whites dislocated from their homes, facing starvation and only owning the clothes they wore, people desperate to try to recover. The challenge of establishing a new social order was founded on freedom and equality, and it was difficult. In the years following the Civil War, the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, the Freedmen's Bureau, provided assistance to tens of thousands of former slaves and impoverished whites in the southern states. The Bureau, established by the War Department in 1865 to undertake the relief effort and unprecedented social reconstruction that would bring freed people to full citizenship, was headed by General Howard. The Freedmen's Bureau built hospitals and gave direct medical assistance as needed. One of the primary functions of the Bureau was to address the day-to-day problems of the freedmen. These included providing clothing, food, and other aid. The Bureau received many applications for such aid, but was limited based on its budget. A stable family unit was almost impossible to maintain under slavery. Marriage between slaves was not legally recognized. Slaves requested permission from their master to be allowed to be married, and the recognition of the union only came within the slave community. The Freedmen's Bureau provided the legal means for these marriages to be recognized. The Bureau directed funds from Northern aid societies for the construction and funding of schools for freedom. Freedmen began to go to school and learn to read and write, eventually holding offices, becoming teachers themselves. Over 1,000 schools were built to educate former slaves. It was the beginning of educated slaves, and they were excited. To solve problems caused by the mass of refugees, Army General Sherman issued Special Field Orders No. 15, a temporary plan granting each freed family 40 acres of tillable land on the islands of the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. The Army had a number of unneeded mules. News of 40 acres and a mule spread quickly. Abandoned plantation land previously owned by the Southern masters was broken into 40-acre sections. This land was given to freedmen and whites willing to work the land. With this hope of a future, our tale begins. Pascal, a slave on a southern plantation, is alone. He barely has time to understand the pain of his mother being killed when his runaway brother Gideon returns. Gideon says the slaves have been freed by President Lincoln. Was Gideon right? Had they really been emancipated for 2 years? Why had Master not told them? "It ain't just talk," said Gideon. "President Lincoln freed us slaves 2 years ago. And better still, now we gonna get our land." Men from other cabins scrambled to crowd around Gideon. Land meant freedom. That's what Gideon said. Pascal was so excited he almost tripped. The people didn't believe Gideon, but Gideon told them it was already happening, that General Sherman had promised land to those who had followed him. "It's already happening. It's that way, just like homesteading had been for white people." Although the others didn't believe Gideon, Pascal knew his brother would not have risked coming back to Master's place if it wasn't true. Pascal asks his friend Nellie 8 to leave with him that very night. He trusts Gideon that they will find this 40 acres of land. It didn't matter how they would get there. Gideon would trust him. And the three set out and for freedom and the land that freedom would bring. How would crippled Pascal keep up? Would the night riders capture them and return them to their master? Or worse yet, would they be killed?